Okay, I'm recording, I think, so I'm just recording this as for the whole hour. I don't know how often I'm actually going to record it, but I figured I'd record this one. But I'm basically just going to be looking at price action based on what Abdu said, picking piece of price action, and then for 1 hour I'm just going to be going over that price action. So give me a second. I just want to put some music on in the background to feel relaxed and nice, calm. Yeah, so we randomly picked and got pound yen, and then I've zoomed out and I basically just picked this because we got some impulsive lows, we got some corrective moves, so I figured this would be quite a nice pair that we can actually go over. I can go over and analyze and see any sort of positions on the way. So immediately I can see that we have this hook point to the left hand side. When we go out to the daily, I just want to look at the positioning or the weekly of where we're sitting. Okay, so just taking note of where we are. So we've broken above this weekly high over here. We do have this one there, but we're still pretty far away from that one. We impulsively have completely broken back in, and now we're just kind of in that state of on the higher time frames of letting price figure out what it wants to do next. And you can kind of almost see that we kind of got this sort of one corrective move down and then got that push up, which would have been there, and then clearly we just gravitated enough to reach those highs. So down here, what have we got? So I may as well include this bit as well. So we can see that we've got this hook point here. Of course, we've sold off very aggressively from this point. We never reached this low, but we can put in that we've tagged this area here, which is a little bit of a consolidation on the daily. So we know that we got a little bit of volume that can trigger from there. But of course, we end up breaking through quite a bit. There we go. We end up breaking through quite a bit here with a big wick. So when we go down to the 4 hour, what have we got? Because immediately you'd be looking more for continuations around here or pullbacks to look for the longs. On the 4 hour, we can see that we get quite corrective in this. So I'm just gonna delve down to the 1 hour. So the positioning at the moment for the shorts. Obviously we're trading directly into that low, but we know that we've got lower lows below, but we are almost at the edge of that. It came very close. So then price pushes up. We get a little bit of corrective price action. You can kind of see that we get a bit of a two-touch, a little bit of a running channel. This breaks out to the upside, gives a little flag, pushes back down, and then we're kind of just sitting in a little bit of corrective, nothing in there that I can see at that point. My next sort of key sort of value area would be up there, but in terms of, I wouldn't really necessarily be looking for a trade within this as this two-touch running channel. Okay, that's not gonna let me go all the way back. You know what? Let me. I'm gonna end price there, so maybe we won't be able to use the 15-minute now. And okay, I don't know what's going on with the 15-minute there. But never mind. Maybe later on we can use it. So what am I seeing here? So of course, on the 1 hour, I'm just trying to draw out all of the price that I can see. We can argue we get an element of this into that. Gives us a double top, higher. So position sort of 1 would be there. But we're looking at, this is back when pound yen was a bit mad with the stops. So that's a 90 pip stop. But you can see, you can understand the position. Obviously we've left the high here. Again, this is definitely a higher risk position, but you can see that we've left the high there. There isn't really a first touch, so sometimes I like to draw it backwards like that, because you can see we got our two bottoms, a little bit of a skinny middle section. It's got an element of a 1, 2, 3 for that last leg, and then we get the mini double top within it. It's not going to let me go back, is it? That's really frustrating. Yeah, it's cutting me off December. That's really annoying. So I can't actually use the 15 minutes. It's not even a year ago. Oh, it's over a year ago, sorry. Oh, well, we'll just stick with the 1 hour for now. That's fine. Plenty of positions on the 1 hour. But yeah, on this one, I wouldn't necessarily be looking for the entry there. You could potentially look for an insurance entry. So there's an insurance entry there. If we got the insurance entry right now, I'd be happy to take that. And then obviously we tap into this high here. We have a premature entry there, and then we actually tap into that, fulfill that double top, and then you get the retrace there. So you could definitely take that position. I mean, you're looking at like an 80 pip start, but it has context. So I'm going to put that as position 1, which is a much higher risk position. And then, so let me remove all of that now. So we go back to the 4 hour. Where are we on the 4 hour? Oh, let me bring price back to that. Where are we on the 4 hour? So I can see on the 4 hour, this is our last sort of hook point. We can see that, and then price taps into that area, and we obviously we can see that we do sell off from that point. But are there any entries in this little run down? So we got our first entry. Is there a possible risk entry within here? On the 4 hour maybe. Definitely difficult to take considering we don't have much structure to it. But you definitely could look at something along the lines of that. I mean, you're looking at like it's 160 pip start, but it's still got 5 to 1 to the low. So I think it's just painting things. But you know, that is technically a position. Like, it's definitely higher risk, but it's definitely a position that you could get involved in. So I am gonna put that one in. So the reason is because we're tapping into an area where we had a 4 hour hook point, mainly a 1 hour hook point, which we continued the sell off from. So we know that there could be some volumes out there. So when we get a strong 4 hour bearish candle like that, you know, it does allow us to enter the position, and you can kind of make out there is an element of a channel up to that area. Again, it's more of a squeeze really. It's not the perfect channel. It's not ideal, but it does. You can see it makes sense. So then when we drop down to the 1 hour, we go all the way back. Are there any entries on the way down? Oh, I'm still finding that. Again, I can't use the 15 minute here, so we kind of get this little descending piece of price action here. We sell off. Then we get this bit of price action here. A little bit more difficult to get involved in something like that. Get a tiny flag after it. This potentially would have been looking for if price come back up to there, but we didn't. So it's sold off. I'm just trying to think. So obviously we've got into the position already with the 4 hour at the top, which is good because it doesn't actually look like there are many positions on the way down. One I think you could potentially take, which would be much harder to get involved in, is this little flag here, because obviously we are further into the run. but we have got this sort of like 2-touch flag here. We've broken through. We're trading below this low over here with it, so we can see that there. So you could actually get involved in a reduced risk entry there. Again, it's difficult, more difficult to take, but you'd be sort of taking it like so on the basis that this continuation here and this impulse has got enough momentum to continue its run. So you'd probably be looking at about 60 pip stop there, which gives you a 4 to 3. So definitely a valid position to take. That is something you can get involved in. It gives you a 2 to 1 before it comes back, so this would have been a break even anyway. But that one does make sense in terms of sequence. It's just a little bit higher on risk because, like I said, you're looking to really just play the back end of this sort of continuation with that impulse 1, 2, 3. After you kind of get, yeah, this would be after swaps, so that's actually quite nice. You get the 6 to 8 candles easily. You get a nice bearish candle, which shows it's more bearish than the previous ones with the little wicks. So you can definitely get involved in that. So that's position 1. I'm sorry, position 3 that I've seen. And all of these have actually played out to some degree, right? So this one has given us a break even. This one has given us roughly 4 to 5%, and this one has also given us a break even. And then after this, what do we get? So you would naturally anticipate larger continuations, which is exactly what we get. We get this large continuation, we get the middle section, we get the push up, the 1, and we get the 1, 2, 3. So again, it would be nicer if we had integrated with a little hook point, but we didn't. There's probably a little 5-minute consolidation in there, but I can't see it. But you could definitely get involved in that 1 hour risk entry, like so, with about a 70 to 80 pip stop there. And again, that gives you, yeah, this one actually makes more sense because it is, when I look at this, you got a little bit of wick bottoms, which isn't ideal, but we are looking to play this. I keep getting confused that that's a low. We are looking to play this for that continued run down lower, right? So we can see our 1, 2, 3 playing the limit of the 4 hours or with that 1 hour entry, but obviously we wouldn't have got tagged in. It's not ideal with that wick, but the risk entry is there. It makes sense. It's valid. You could get involved in that, and that again is another quick break even. So it's 4 positions that you could have taken. None of them losing positions, all within fairly decent scope of a 3 to 1. So that has a 3 to 1. This easily has a 3 to 1. This has a 3 to 1, which we committed to, but of course we would have been taken out for break even anyway. And this also, with the range of this potentially becoming that next leg down, also has a 3 to 1 to it. So yeah, because you would have been a break even anyway, because you would have been running 1.3. And then of course price starts to move up, so I'm just going to remove this. So we can see when we go back to the 4 hour for a second, price is tapped into that area there, which isn't the most significant of areas, but we can see that price does move up with a bit of, not so much momentum, but it is a direct move up here. I'm just thinking, is there a way that I can get involved in catching any of these longs? I mean, really, again, I can't use the 15-minute, but you could argue that potentially there was something within there. So I'm going to remove the structures now that we've got our trades. So we've got 4 trades there. And then next sort of main value area would be the retest of this. Well, more of an inflection point really. which we do tap into. Of course, our main value area is there, so we tap into that. We tap into the back of that. We get the big push down, and I'm just now I would be anticipating again that this could actually be a larger structure. Like I say, you know, I'm going to have to remove this box because it's confusing. I'm just going to put my line. Again, this doesn't make too much sense to me. I don't like the look of that structure, so I can't really see anything on the move up here. I wouldn't really be looking for much in terms of longs there. Yeah, so this will be now our main sort of area that I'll be looking for, because we reacted to it. So I'm assuming that was some sort of news. 7 o'clock, yeah. We get the push down. I mean, there's nothing there on the 1 hour, so I mean, you'd be forcing something if you went down to the 15 minute on that, took a risk entry within there. Probably would have had price looking for that, and it would have been an insurance entry, but we didn't get that. Then you can argue that we start to get this sort of pullback expanding. Didn't come back up to this area, sold off again, but we do have a reason for it because we've got the 1, 2, 3 expanding structure, and then this here is our flag that we could have got involved in. It's a bit more difficult to get involved in. It's something that I probably wouldn't take, so I'm going to leave that one alone. Doesn't commit, comes back up, gives a double top again, and then we just end up in a bit of sideways price action across here, which of course becomes much more difficult to take positions on. So I probably actually wouldn't even be looking at price action when it was in here, just because the sequence before it, not fantastic, and I'd be waiting for price to kind of pull back into this area anyway. So I wouldn't really be looking to force any positions within this personally. Like there probably are some, you know, got this sort of 1, 2, 3 that kind of intersects with this area. You can look for the short because you get the flag. I mean, I definitely see it, but I just think that the positioning, the sequence that we've come from, the fact that this isn't really a value area, it's a bit of a steep flag as well. Okay, so now we're up here. Now we have tapped into our sort of main inflection point before we reach the next set of highs, which we don't reach for a while. So what can we look for in this? Okay, well, we're on the 4 hour, we've got our high, we get a push down, so let's see if we get any 1 hour risk entries. Any entries within this little push down here. So we've tapped into that area, because kind of building a potential consolidation like so. Get a push down. Not really an entry for me there. We sell off, we break this low, we turn around fairly quickly. We create this sort of consolidation, we get the flag, then we get the move up, and we fail to hit this, and then we sell off again. And then I think the next real entry that is a valid one would be this. So you can't have this 2 touch here. Again, the sequence is poor, but you can make out that there is an element of a 1, 2, 3 to this. Again, it's a bit of a push, and you would be entering personally on the break of that candle there. I think you'd be looking at. So again, not the greatest of positions. You could argue there's an element of a free touch to it, but you'd be playing the override anyway. And of course this one actually does end up committing, so let's figure out why we think that is. So I can see the position, it's a 2-touch continuation, it's got a little bit of internal structure. We have the 1 hour close. So let's go back to the 4 hour. Of course we don't have that 4 hour candle, we have the wick at the bottom. I think this one is just, do you know what it is? We've had the failure of the short here. We tap into this, we get this, and we look like we're potentially breaking it higher to go higher. But then we actually get the failure at the bottom, the failure of the bullish structure to break out higher above those highs, and we're still in that area, right? So we could just be building up a little bit more volume, which is, I think, what, because it's a 4 hour flag, we don't get much of an impulsive push down. But I think because we do have that little bit of internal structure, it kind of allows us to get involved with the risk entry. But again, I think that's a difficult position to get involved in in the moment, like live. But again, this would give you probably go for about 80 pips up on this, just to be safe. And you do get a 3-to-1 on this, so you'd have been out for a little win there to that low. And then you'd probably, if we flip the chart actually, because you're looking for the bottom, so you'd be kind of anticipating this is sort of like the 1, 2, 3 for the last leg of this larger structure to then look for the buy, right? So it actually has context to the position when you put it like that. So I actually think that's an alright position overall. But now that obviously we do have this 1, 2, 3, it kind of looks like we could be breaking out to the upside now. You get this push, you get another sort of mini 2-touch flag right there. Again, I do think a little bit difficult to take, but you could. I think if we, well, annoyingly, I accidentally cancelled the recording. What I was going to say was, if we didn't get this bit of price action here, I would have been more inclined to actually take this position for the long. But because of that, I would have stayed out. So I'm okay with that one. And then once we get that push off and we start to sort of see failures around here, I would have definitely turned more bearish in my sentiment, just because we've completely failed with this kind of like next continuation higher. And we obviously have tapped into that key value area where now that we didn't get this breakout here, I would definitely be looking for the shorts. Just because I feel like it's the high time frame that's sort of kicking in. So then we'd be looking down here. I wouldn't necessarily. So we obviously tap into this little bit of a hook point here. Flag's right on the right there. No impulse from it. Again, can't use the 15-minute at the moment, so I'm just solely using the 1 hour. Difficult to get involved in something like that. It's not really. So I would have had this on, anticipating the price to potentially come back, and we get a little bit of a 1, 2, 3 there. Then we can take that, but we don't get it. Price continues to sell off. Not really seeing an entry yet. The next entry that I see is this one here, but I'm trying to think, how do I get involved in something like that? How do I get involved in something like this? I think they just things that are difficult to get involved in. And then this one on the 4 hour, where are we here? Yeah, so we've kind of missed this leg down. Difficult to get in with a 4 hour entry there. We've missed this leg down, but it's just because I can't see any entries within it. I don't want to start for the only one I can actually see is that one, but of course we run the risk of being so close to that low. But I'm gonna put it there anyway. It's a bit of it's like a little free touch continuation. On the 1 hour, I just can't see how I would get involved in this leg down here. But of course, then what happens? Okay, price has tapped into this area. Daily, here's the daily looking where we've tapped into that. Okay, so we get the morning star. Okay, so 100% we are now, but I'll be looking for more bullish sentiment based on that price action. Maybe just for the short term to potentially trade into this high for a larger structure. So can I get involved in anything around here? Okay, so there is one. A bit difficult to take, but we do have. And that's Thursday, so let's check when we get that daily. Wednesday, okay, so that's in. Yeah, so I think that would be the risk entry there. So that's one thing I have seen actually, you don't need to get the perfect candle for the risk entry. Because this went up and gave 3 to 1, but I would have actually stayed out of that because of that candle there. It's just a steeper flag in it. And you would, but it still gives you room to manage. Yeah. And then of course, I wouldn't really have got involved in any of that because we don't come back into that low. So we would have got the breakout, we would have got this continuation, again a little bit steep, which you could then also take as a reduced risk entry, like so. On the anticipation now that we've broken above this area and this high, and we've retested the back end of it, you can actually get involved in that, so that's a fairly nice position as well. And of course because of the high time frame now, we are bullish because of that evening star formation there. We would have had, so the next entry was there, so we would have had another daily bullish candle there, and we would have been, like I said, trading above this area here, which is where I would have been looking for the short, like that next area for the short. And then the next area would have been, we'll be looking at is there. So if we ran this in, what do we get? A little bit messy, hard to say, but might be something on the 15. Gets the push down, we get the flag, but that's something I would entertain. Fails to commit to there, so the bullish pressure is definitely on. We push up, we kind of get this flag, which is above this area, so this would be something I'll be looking to get involved in for the long, but I just don't think there would have been an entry for me. Again, one potentially, I mean we're in December now, I still don't think it's going to let me. If we, okay, cool, okay, we can, so I'll just have to replay it and stuff. Okay, so this is a difficult one to take, right, because it's on the low. So I would have, looking back at it, I'm just sizing, trying to, so you get the flag there. I'm trying to think, there's no point putting your entry there, because even if it does break up just to take that high, you're going to get tagged in, and then if it goes down, you're going to get tagged out anyway, so you may as well commit to the break of there. But yeah, and I think that's a solid position. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad position at all. You can actually see more so that you, if we just remove that for a second, that you have an element. Of a 1, 2, 3 there. I think that's fine to take. course, we get that along there, easy 3 to 1, up to that high there, and then of course just in the break, and then price moves higher, taps into both this area and this area here, so immediately we'd be looking for the shorts. Let me just put that one back on. You could, because now that we've broken above that, I'll put an arrow in there. Could have potentially got a limit play on that, maybe. Yeah, so there would be a limit play. There's of course higher in risk because we know we've got those two highs above, but these are the two areas where price really kicked in with the momentum. So you could have got involved there. That's your 4. That's a 4-hour entry there. And then when we dropped in to low time frames, I'm just looking at this 15-minute flag here. Difficult to get involved in that because there's 2 wicks there. I wouldn't necessarily be cutting through them because there's 2. If it was just a 1, then maybe, but the fact that there's 2. So next I would be looking for something here, or for price to pull back into that. Bit of nasty price action there, isn't it? Okay. I wouldn't really class that as a classic V shape. Definitely doesn't look nice at all to something that I want to trade. Okay, so all we've done here, so we've got a break even on our 4-hour entry, and then all we've done is come all the way back up to create a double top. Okay, I'm just trying to see, there's no 4-hour entry there for me because that's a doji. I wouldn't take a run out risk entry there. Hard to really say that is the structure. There's a 1, 2, 3. I'd see it based on that. Take that. Yeah. If this had formed a little lower with a little bit more than 100%, but it didn't, so let's let that continue. Okay. Well, now we're kind of in a state of continuation, right? So if we remove this, let's go back to the higher time frame for a second. So of course, we've tapped into this value area here where we triggered most of this momentum. We had the wick that broke through and tapped into this area. We've now just filled that wick and then sold off again. So now we're now bearish again, based on the fact of the areas that we've tapped into and the daily profile that we've got with these bearish candles. Nice 4-hour as well, but again we could just be coming back into that area. So taking the short here, I don't think there is a short personally. Because we would have had that, and then we would have had something like this. You do get an element of a 1, 2, 3. Gets the push down, you get the flag. But I would have found that probably a little bit. No, that's not the point. I'm trying to train my eyes to see when the market goes. I wouldn't take that. Let's get a bunch of horrible sideways price action for a bit. That's an interesting piece here. So all we've done is come back up, got a big V shape. Big old V shape. Doesn't give a 4-hour entry. Doesn't give a continuation. Just looking at this position, we've obviously got this larger V shape, we've tapped into both areas over here. We failed to sell off and then we've moved bullishly and pawned a little flag. It's like a counter move without actually having the structure to it here. Is, I guess the structure is the V shape that's failed. And then it's just formed bullish continuation. So it's definitely more advanced, difficult to take up on the month, but it makes sense. Okay, let's tidy this up a little bit now. Zoom in. Where are we seeing? So again, price action here is not looking fantastic at all. I'm not a fan of where we're sitting. I would much rather we come back up and tap into this area. Yeah, because you could have argued you'd be looking for the long here. I just don't, that's just such a squeeze of price action there. It's difficult to see that as anything but. We get the pullback. Oh, price action on paying in. It's not nice. But there's still a bunch of trades that you could have got involved in. Okay. So now where are we sitting? It kind of looks like we've created this larger continuation. We've tapped into this low, filled the gap. I am now looking for a 4-hour entry for the long. Okay. So how can we play this? Well, you can take it as a straight risk entry. Probably cropping the stop for about 100 pips. That gives you up to the highs. You're looking at 5 to 1. But let's set the limit on this. Make sure I can. And then you'd enter in about there. And you'd probably start cropping about there. And then let's see, do we get tagged in? So there, we've been tagged in. I think this one is one of the better positions we've actually seen because it's got context to it, we've got larger structure, kind of playing this as that sort of, oh, okay, well that daily candle's ruined it for me, but kind of seeing this as the 1, 2, 3 to potentially come back up and take out that high. So we would have been tagged in, and then tagged out 5 AM Friday, which is fine. So let's see on the lower time frame if there is any sort of indication. Oh, potentially could have moved to break even around this area after you see this candle and then we start to get that push up. I also think they could have been a lower time frame entry there. Pound, euro pound. I just want to rein this in a second. Let's try to see. It's nowhere near as low. It's difficult to just call that after that. No impulse. Yeah, I'm fine with the 4-hour entry on that. I think that 4-hour makes sense. Probably would have been a loss, but a good one. And then, as we know with the daily, we end up just breaking through to the downside, so that's absolutely fine. Now that we've broken through this, obviously key low, I wouldn't be too concerned about all of these little lows on the way down. I'd actually have this now, and we're kind of sorry, in this range. When now, okay, price has left a little hook point there. I would be looking for price to come back into that area. Which we do as a V shape, which is ideal. Obviously, we would have a preferred structure. We tap into it with a big doji candle. Then we're going to break it. Well, this looks like a potential larger structure. This becomes that middle section. And then we can play that into that low. But again, sometimes I like these larger structures. I don't like all this gap. So I'd be looking for price to come back up to there and play that. Which we do not get. So that is clearly not what price is telling me. And then because we've tapped into this, here, do we get anything? So we get our little flag there. You want not too much impulsive price action, but we do get the 4-hour close. So we could have actually, yeah, I think that's an okay position to take that little flag, of course. You protect against it there. And you run the risk of not. I actually don't think you would protect it, because you've got the 4-hour close. You probably, what you would do is you would enter just below that, like that, and you'd probably go like a 30 pip stop, something like that, and it gives you just enough room to manage that if you really need to, but it's a bit of a push. But it does give you, yeah, I think that's how you would take it. You'd enter just below. So once you got that 15-minute candle there, you'd have confirmation of the breakout of this flag, and obviously if it retraced back in, then you just manually close the position. And then the next one we have this, more difficult to take because it does break out, but the context is there, and you could think it's a bit of a push to say that I would take that, even though it commits a bit. We get a sideways pressure, and then it comes a bit. I just think because this candle closes outside of the structure, you're asking for trouble there, and then getting in something like this is it's just too high a risk. Yeah, so I'm happy with that entry there. Again, the sequence of the price isn't fantastic, but it's kind of like understanding what price is actually trying to do here and mitigating as much risk as we can. And obviously with this potentially becoming a bullish continuation to move higher, I can mitigate the risk by entering there, but of course I would manage very, very aggressively with how price reacts to that low there. And then when we on the back to the 1 hour, got another V shape. We're going to break it up higher. So all we do is go back and tap into this. Point there. Okay, yeah, I'll be definitely looking for a big 4 V shape here. But at the same time, we've tapped into this zone here. We found we do have the gaps to the highs. There's nothing there for me. We've clearly now that would have broken past. I would have looked very long if price had tapped this a bit. Okay, it's very close. The entry candle wasn't. Yeah. So I'm going to log this one anyway, but that is the sign that of the why this didn't commit. 4 hour ends in a wick, larger wick, another wick. That's a key. That's a good key sign there. That even though this is a 1, 2, 3, it's clean. You know, you're protected against the retest of that. Haven't met this low yet. The fact it fails was because the 4 hour there was the sign, so that's a good lesson there. Okay, so we got a trade over here, but let's build the thesis to it. How do we get to that trade? Okay, well, we tapped into that area. We did get the pullback, but ultimately we're still looking for the shorts. We get the pullback over 50%, definitely well over. But it's about 75% that we hit. We sell off again. We pull back again. We sell off again. So this just becomes corrected price action. We end up dropping out, trading below it. I think that's the key sign there. The fact that we're below that low. We actually get a little 3-touch flank with a bit of a gap, which is quite nice. These are lovely, lovely positions. So you get that 3-touch. You get your high test, and then you get your second, your bearish sort of entry. So you'd be looking to enter anything around there. And because this isn't an impulsive last leg, I'm not worried about this turning into a bullish continuation. I think that's the lowest start we've gone so far. 30 pips, which covers us lovely. Obviously the only downside to this is you're trading through this, but you'd roughly just about be able to manage it if we start to turn around, you'd be able to get a break even, I think. So that one's, I think that's a fairly decent position. And do we manage to we just about get to 3 to 1, so again, another target here. And then price gets wiki again. Do we then form a large continuation here? Then we jump down to the 15-minute. Not something I would get involved in just yet. We get a flag. What time of day was it? Then we get this flag. Okay, so I don't think I would have been looking for too much. Yeah, I mean, we're coming to end the day, so you wouldn't reverb it. There's a little 5 minute in there. In terms of a long here. Okay, it's not bread and butter for me, is it? So, okay. I don't remember if Panjam was on watch much at the start of the year. I feel like it probably wasn't though, because his price actually is not nice. I'm not really seeing anything on this at the moment. Nothing that indicates me worth taking. I think it's just a bit messy at the moment. See, I was thinking about that when I saw it. That's a small little flag. We've tapped into this area. I think you have to take this because this has failed as bullish. What's it done? We've tapped into this little area here. We tapped into this low, push up, bullish continuation, failed, bearish continuation, short. That's prime. Like as a sequence of price action, that is lovely because what's happened? Well, we know we've got this little hook point here which triggered volume. Price has come back and tapped into that area here, like so. It's pushed up, it's formed a bullish continuation, it's failed to move higher and moved straight into a bearish continuation just below it. That's beautiful. Yeah, I really like that. And then yeah, you would have entered about there. Yeah, you would have had the reduce risk entry set. Like so. And then yeah, 35, 36 pips, well, 37 pips, and then you know, you'd probably be out of it now. Yeah, 3 to 1. And then if you caught it, you'd be looking for the scaling down here. I think you'd just be looking for price to kind of play this horrible little range that we're in. And then we don't get the entry there. That's just, you know, we are on the 15 minute. We do not get the entry. Price is just consolidating, and then we sell again. Do we get an entry within there? You can argue that we might do actually. So all we've done is actually come back to retest the back end of that. There's an element of 1, 2, 3 to it if you're cutting through, and I actually think you probably would be able to take this position after that strong 15-minute retrace like so. That's another position because of the retest, because of the sequence that we're now in. Small flag, failure the bullish flag, small flag, push down, larger flag, push down. This one, you'd be ripping 2. Then to the low, you would have 3, but that, you know, that's the stop loss I would go for, 45 on that situation. And then there we go, tagged it, another 3%. So that's clean. I love that price action there. And then of course we end up selling off even further. So if you do end up managing to hold it, that becomes an 11% trade, and that becomes, you know, a 7% trade. So, but in terms of taking these here, I think these are much more difficult to get involved in. And then of course, so on the high time frame, this has actually all made sense, right? Because yes, we know we've got the gaps to these highs up here, but we know we don't have to fill that. We get this big push down, leave a gap to this low. Again, we know we don't have to fill that straight away. We get the push up, we get this V shape here. We fail to commit from there, and then all price does is actually pull back. So if we're looking at the top of this run down, price pulls back to just over 50%, which is just so happens to be where all of this volume triggered. We get a couple of entries within there for the longs and shorts anyway, and then it just gets a little bit messy around here, but the context is still short because we get this push down, we get that continuation, we get this push up. This just ends up becoming a bit more like a running channel type vibe. We get the push down, we get the flag on the break, becomes a little bit messy, then we get the gap, we have a very clear high, and then exactly what I explained with that price action earlier. So yeah, that all makes sense to me. And then obviously now we are trading back at those lows where we can now look for a potential daily entry. I wonder if that's a 4-hour entry we could get involved in, because we've had the wick. We had the wick at the low. Yeah, you could potentially get involved in something like that. And then your buy would be set there, and then you'd be cropping through the wick roughly with about a 90-ish pip stop. And then obviously you'd be looking to hold that for longer term, so you would have been tagged in, and then immediately tagged out. Not immediately, 4 hours last time. But yeah, that is a nice piece of price action that we have just delved into there. So just continue this because I'm going to be stopping in a minute. And of course, yeah, okay, this now makes sense, right? So if we just get rid of all of these little lines, I just got rid of the entries. Okay, another little lines on the bottom there. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. So all we've done doesn't really give us a daily entry, so you probably would have had an order set, but we don't get it. We get that big impulsive push up, and now we are in that state of continuation where you'll be looking for the longs. When this is where price action is, it's actually turned pretty good. So at the end of my session is when it starts to get very, very nice. But yeah, I'd be looking for price to come back into there now. Let's just play this a little bit, see what happens. Does come in with an element of a 1, 2, 3. Like so, 1, 2, 3, that's your middle section. Definitely difficult to take, being short centuries only, I think. Gets a bit messy. Potentially take that. But yeah, other than that, let's quickly recap how many trades there were. So total amount of trades that we have just, so let's get rid of any of the so in 1 hour we have found ourselves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 positions across this price section. I think they're all valid positions, all within this. Lovely.